Morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Thursday, June the 5th, the year of our Lord 2025. Welcome in to Coffee right here on Chief Sports South Carolina YouTube, or if you're listening on the the Gamecocks podcast channel. We certainly appreciate you tuning in. I certainly appreciate you tuning in. There's no we. It's just me, JC. I'm in a rhyming mood this morning. Anyway, good to be with you. Certainly later today, just some scheduling notes. Schedule's normal. Ben Portnoy of the Sports Business Journal, formerly of the state newspaper, will join JB along with Rob Williams from SEC Sunday Night. Phil and I will be along with the show at noon. The morning show starts at 10. That's the name of that show. I didn't mention that, but most of you know. Anyway, fantastic start here to Coffee, right? But yeah, so they're on, and then Phil and I will be along to talk about all kinds of things, recruiting. Obviously, Nana's Porch chat box questions from the club chief members. Got a little conspiracy theory about Carl Winslow. Also, the Gen X movie list that we've been trying to talk about the last 2 days and haven't gotten to. All that will be on a very, very solid Thursday episode of the show. Of course, it's the middle of recruiting season, and there's no better place to go than thebigspur.com. Running a special right now, 60% off annual VIP memberships. It's right there on the front page of the site. Also, if you go ahead and take the plunge and pay full price monthly or annually, you get Paramount Plus for free. I almost said Palmetto Plus. Wouldn't that be a cool, like, South Carolina only streaming service? Palmetto Plus. I don't know. Maybe I'll create that one day if I win the lottery. Anywho, good to be with you again, and we're obviously going to talk some football today. Put in a couple of crystal balls yesterday. JB Shabazz, Sequel Patterson, Gamecock crystal ball there. I went ahead and took the plunge for Tamarian Watkins. It's about 6 or 7. But there's speaking of the Big Spur, there's a free article up. You don't have to be a member to read it. Kind of outlining the latest crystal ball runs. The title of the article is Crystal Ball Run. So you can check that out on thebigspur.com and kind of get in depth with all of that stuff. We talked about it on the show yesterday as well. So lots going on, lots of recruiting momentum for South Carolina. I think that that's a good thing. We've talked about blue chip ratio and rankings and recruiting and roster and all that. And it still remains true. If they get some of these, if they just do what they normally do and get half these guys that have visited, hopefully a little more than half, then Carolina probably could be sitting pretty rankings wise, blue chip ratio wise, all that good stuff. So it's good. Coach Beamer and his staff have done an excellent job building relationships, hiring recruiters on his end. Darren Usher's picked up where Taylor Edwards left off, just sort of organizing the whole thing. Those positions like he has are basically your recruiting coordinators now. They don't have most schools don't have a coaching staff member that does it, but you do have good Sterling Lucas, obviously excellent recruiter. Torian Gray obviously does his thing in recruiting. I look at Lonnie Teasley has done a really good job recruiting offensive linemen. Mike Fury on offense does well. Markwell Blackwell is in on Amari Thomas from Florida State, trying to flip him. By the way, let me explain this because there's been some talk about running back recruiting. Montario Hardesty was here the first 3 seasons under Beamer, and it was a tough go for him. Obviously, I couldn't tell you that he did an outstanding job because he really didn't. He got Matthew Fuller, but Matthew Fuller played at a high school with one of the most legendary player in school history's brother. He played for Jabo Shaw. I'm not taking anything away from landing him because there are other schools sniffing around, but he came up short a lot with running backs, and that wasn't, that happens, especially when you're going after top guys. That's bad, but it's not so bad. But then if you kind of look at when he was here, everybody left early out of his room, which is strange. I mean, That was weird because, he apparently had a good relationship with the players. I don't know what it was, but that just wasn't working. And then Blackwell comes in. When you evaluate his recruiting, it's hard to because the first year he came in and there was already Rocket Sanders and Jawan Howell and Oscar Attaway were committed. Taylor Edwards got that done. Dowell Loggins, of course, was involved with both what I call Arkansas kids. Rocket was from Florida, but Oscar Attaway's from North Little Rock, and there was a familiarity there already. Of course, Taylor worked at Arkansas too before he went to Maryland, so they kind of knew who those guys were. And then Howell was an outstanding find. So there wasn't really much to go on there with the class of 2024. 2025, they didn't want the kid from Belton Honeypath that ended up at Clemson. And look, those decisions, I always say, those are judgment calls with in-state kids that, you're evaluated on down the road. And sometimes it blows up in your face. Sometimes, like with Andre Ellington, South Carolina didn't go on him, and he went to Clemson and obviously was good and was an NFL player. But did it really hurt Carolina? Probably not, because they got Brandon Wilds and Marcus Lattimore and Mike Davis, and they were fine. So sometimes it doesn't hurt, but you still think, well, they were good players. They could have been on the roster. And the same thing's happened at Clemson. I mean, look at all the wide receivers Clemson has just kind of turned their nose up at that have gone to South Carolina that have been outstanding, including Debo Samuel, Alshon Jeffrey, Sidney Rice. Clemson could have had Sidney Rice. He wanted to go there. That was he signed ultimately after 63-17 that game back 20 years ago. I got to start time stamping that because we're 21 years since or 22 years since that, and some won't know what that means for some of you younger folks out there. But it was, they didn't want him because of speed. I mean, there's a long list of them. The crazy thing about that is Clemson really until the last couple of years, and you look at that, and there's South Carolina certainly had their struggles at receiver at times, but Clemson has had really good receivers. So I guess it hadn't blown up on them, other than really good players they didn't went to their rival and played well that they could have had. So it's always a judgment call. And on that kid in particular, I love his film. I think he's good. A lot of our recruitniks, Clint, our resident recruitniks, love him. But they didn't go on him. So that's that. Didn't sign a high school back in the class. They did get Rasul Faison out of the portal. And so, this cycle, they're in on some guys. Carson Baker is a Florida lean right now, but South Carolina gets him in on a visit. We'll see what happens there. And then Amari Thomas, they may have to go portal again. 2027, though, with regards to Marquell Blackwell, you got the Aiden kid from Woodruff and Sagara, who recently got a Clemson offer from Burns right there in Spartanburg County in state. Those are critical guys, I think, as of now. Jalen McGill, who used to be at Broome and transferred to a private school in Spartanburg, he was a guy way on the radar, and stock just dropped in the eyes of the staff, and he went to Rutgers and then flipped to North Carolina. So we'll see how that works out there. And there's been guys like that through the years. I remember the year Lattimore came out, there was a running back at Irmo named Mustafa Green who was really, really good. And Mustafa ended up at NC State and didn't do much. So you never know. But I have seen some talk about Blackwell and his recruiting and things, and I think he's doing okay. I mean, he's building relationships and all that. And at running back, there's always the transfer portal, to go get a guy if you need one. And I think that will continue. And then you got those in-state kids for 2027 if they don't get Thomas or Baker. Now, just to fill you in, and we'll wrap up recruiting talk here. With regards to running back, they're looking for a specific type of guy, a faster guy, not necessarily smaller, but breakaway backs like Amari Thomas and Carson Baker. And This makes sense from the standpoint of our main topic of the day, which is Mike Shula. Because when you look at what the Panthers did when he had the big year in 2015, D'Angelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart, those were fast backs. And so, and look, Jawan Howell and Matthew Fuller have plenty of speed. Don't get me wrong, but are they the breakaway 4-3? I mentioned C.J. Spiller yesterday a couple times on the shows. C.J. Spiller type of guys. I mean, C.J. is really really fast, but or was really really fast. But are they those types of guys that just they're gone? That's kind of what they're looking for. Thomas and Baker fit that bill. I think with anybody else, they probably just wait till 2027. Segura at Burns and Aiden at Woodruff are both bigger, faster. They're big backs with speed, so they're more like Jawan Howell types of guys. They're going to be a kid from Woodruff's going to be like 215, 220 pounds, 6'1", that kind of guy. So, that's kind of the skinny on running back recruiting for this cycle as far as what Blackwell's looking for. But he's done well. I mean, they've all, to put a bow on the staff. I mean, I think they've got some good recruiters. It's different than it used to be. It seems like I say every day, here's something we have to adjust to because things have changed, and this is one. It used to be 10, 15 years ago, it was your assistant coaches that went and did the bulk of it. You had a recruiting coordinator on staff, and you would hire these rock star recruiters. They may not be able to coach their way out of a paper bag, but he'd be like assistant tight ends coach, but they'd sign 15 guys, mercenaries, if you will. And there still are some around college football, but it's much more of a structured organizational thing. And it has to be because there's too much. There's the portal. There's NIL considerations that you have to work on. It's more of a presenting of a complete package beyond the packages they used to present. So I get it. I mean, I think sometimes on the outside, we look at coaches and players and we don't really talk about time. Like these guys are, AI bots that work 24 hours a day. And we don't understand. Sometimes there's only so many hours in a day, and you've got to take time to build authentic relationships, which is still a huge key in recruiting, trust, things like that. I mean, it's even back in the mid 2000s when Urban Meyer got to Florida and they ended up outlawing text messages because of this. They had interns like just texting, getting the coaches' phones and texting guys all day. But those are interns doing it. So, I mean, it's time. It's time. I mean, trust me, I've this past year or so, I've learned the value of that a lot. And these are human beings. So I think sometimes we sit there and go, well, what are they doing here? Why don't they call it all? It's time. It's time. So, in the interest of time, it's a little bit different as far as who's doing what, but it still comes down to one thing: comfort level. Recruiting decisions still come down to comfort level, and that is facilitated by relationships. Winning and losing affects that certainly. The mood around your program, atmosphere, getting along with the current players, and NIL money too, because if you're not comfortable with the money you're getting, you're not going to pick the school. So comfort level determines recruiting decisions, and it's a lot of people mistaken that. I think during the Muschamp era, people kind of get on me like, well, a lot of good these relationships do and all that. Well, it's not really relationships. That's part of the puzzle. It's a big part of it. Big part of it. It's comfort level. And winning and losing impacts comfort level. I mean, it's a strong argument when you have a team that's going 4-8 and all those guys that you have the relationship with are, one losing season away from getting canned and not being there. that affects your comfort level. You may love that staff the most, but you're going to go here where you're more comfortable, right? Parents' opinions matter in that too. So it's kind of crazy. Some folks are very comfortable with Mike Shula taking over the offense at South Carolina. Some folks are not. I wanted to do a little dive in because it's time. We've talked about Shula in the offense a couple of times, but we will revisit topics here on Coffee when more information comes in and more research is done. And so it's June 5th. We are less than 2 months away from the start of fall camp. Shula, of course, is recruiting Landon Duckworth right now, doing a very good job of that. He's been here a year, was promoted to offensive coordinator after Dowell Loggins left for Appalachian State to be the head coach of the Mountaineers. So Mike Shula, who was an analyst, senior offensive assistant, because now you can have unlimited coach. There really are no analysts. They coach. Just my glasses here. Just as much as anybody. And he's kind of LaNorris Sellers' personal quarterbacks coach last year, which is a hell of a personal quarterbacks coach when you look through the quarterbacks that he has helped and developed. He's in the pros got Josh Allen, David Gerard was an all-pro when he coached him. Cam Newton, we know that. There's been a long list. Daniel Jones. I don't know that Daniel Jones was particularly great with the Giants, but he's helped him along. So his track record with coaching quarterbacks is impeccable. But I could sit here and talk about that all day and blow sunshine and rainbows at everybody and talk about how great it is. But that's a different subject. Coaching quarterbacks is part of what offensive coordinators do, but I think you folks want to hear more about play calling and all that. And again, not to go back through it, play calling is important at South Carolina. It's a topic because of who's coached here and some of the situations that have been in, the team's been in through the years with play callers. Steve Spurrier obviously is one of the greatest in the history of college football at calling, dialing up the ball plays. And that's just a big topic at South Carolina, probably abnormally so than in other places to a certain extent. I mean, you can ask Georgia fans how they feel about the offense of Mike Bobo right now, which I mean, we'll see what happens with them, but it's a topic everywhere, but here it's even more so. I mean, it just because it's been a lot of feast or famine around here. When you have the greatest of all, it's a topic at Florida all the time. I mean, Steve Spurrier coached here. That's play calling. And he won. So there's that. But I could talk about the quarterback development. I think that's great. I think he helped LaNorris Sellers quite a bit last year and will continue to do so. But he's running the offense. And my case, when the job was just kind of open before Beamer had promoted Schula officially, was just to keep it rolling because you have a young quarterback. I didn't see the point in bringing in a new guy that LaNorris wasn't comfortable with. You always have a transfer portal thing. Not that Sellers was ever going anywhere, but that kind of stuff, you got to kind of blend it. And I think Beamer did a really good job this year. My dog, I mean, he usually never barks during coffee. This has been about 2 days in a row. Red's been on the podcast. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't like the topics anyway. So, I was in favor of that. I said, gosh, they're doing so well. Just keep it going. I mean, Mike Shula's got experience. He kind of, there's some similarities in what he likes to do, most likely play calling wise. And, just keep it going. Go from Dowell Loggins to Mike Shula. That makes sense. He's Mike Shula. I mean, how hard can it be? Well, I think maybe looking back on it in hindsight, and at the time, I don't necessarily think it was a stretch to say it, but looking back on it in hindsight, I was a little off with that because I think the idea was, probably just going to take what Dowell had and tweak some things and keep going. And that's not the case. Dowell Loggins is at App State now, and what he liked to do on offense and his playbook and his offense, the scheme went with him. That's he's gone. And so it's going to be Mike Shula's offense, and it'll be new. It'll be a new system. There is obviously a lot of carryover, but it's a new deal. It's not going to be the same thing. And so I think that maybe what I was trying to say at the time was probably 70% the same thing and all that. But and they'll be similar. They're just like there was carryover from the previous guy to Dowell. I mean, there were still things they did that were the same concept. Maybe it's called something different. Maybe they tweaked the formation a little bit. Um, and so there's that. So what happened in the bowl game? That's interesting. First and foremost, I didn't have a big problem with the play calling in the bowl game. There's not enough time to install, things you're comfortable with as a play caller when you're preparing for a bowl. He did lean heavily on the assistants to kind of get a game plan together, but I thought the actual calls were fine. And once again, I'll remind everybody, LaNorris Sellers not running is not a play call. There's no play call that anybody would call. If they do, they're not going to succeed. Where you sit there and tell your quarterback, don't run under any circumstances. I think what happened there with regards to Sellers running versus not running is two things. I think number one, maybe LaNorris overcorrected himself. I think that's part of it. I think number two, I think that when you look at the protection in that game, it was pretty good. Now Illinois dropped a bunch of guys. They didn't send a bunch of guys, and I almost think to a certain extent his clock kind of got off because if you think about the Clemson game, the Tigers blitzed and sent pressure and ran all kinds of like stunts. I mean, it was the game plan blew up in their face, obviously, and that's probably why they got a new defensive coordinator, if we're being honest. But they came after it, and that's one way to do it. It's more than one way to do things. But Illinois was dramatically different and dropped. And so if you're in that Clemson game, big intense game, all that good stuff, where you've kind of been on a heater, your clock as a player, you know beat run, dun 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 dun. Well, against Illinois, you have all this time, and if you notice, he checked down quite a bit in that game. Oscar Attaway had 7 receptions, and Illinois played coverage, and you kind of wait, and in a lot of ways, finding the check down guys what you're supposed to do. But as far as him taking off and running, I think he was almost, wow, I got time. And those are small things that will be corrected as we go along. Um, so if you ask me what happened in the bowl and why we didn't see LaNorris Sellers taking off and gashing the defense and all that, it's because his clock was off on the back end, and you got a clock for running and you got a clock for passing. I thought he passed the ball okay, and so yeah, and those types of things are all ingredients that go into an upset. If you're trying to upset a team, looking at it from the Illinois standpoint, you need that guy that's their star player to be a little off, and he was, and they upset the Gamecocks. Not scoring in the red zone causes you to, get upset. Missing field goals causes you to get upset. Getting gashed on defense, not getting off the field causes you to be upset. So I don't think Mike Shula in the play calling in the bowl is anything for anybody to look at and go, oh, I'm worried about this guy. Don't. It's just it happens. I mean, think about taking you back in time again, the frozen pizza bowl in Birmingham. Carolina scored 7 points on a garbage touchdown that day against Connecticut. That was a good offense. Garcia, Alshon Jeffrey, wasn't Spurrier's play calling, it just didn't work. And so and that was a low point. But right after that, Carolina came back. A player named Marcus Lattimore joined the program, and they won the SEC East. So you can rebound from it, but as far as just the play calling, game plan, all that, I thought it was good. I thought it was a particularly good given the circumstances because they kind of had to piece the game plan and the offense together, you know. And he had to kind of learn some things. And Dowell Loggins did not help with the transition. He just left. So, and I'm not blaming him. He's a head coach, and they got to go recruit, or they're losing players in the portal. I thought it was a little bit ambitious to say he was going to call the bowl when they said or were talking like he would. However, that was what happened there, and I'm not blaming the lack of a playbook on the loss. Like I said, it's an upset, and those happened, and the ingredients were all there. I don't think it tells you a pile of cottage cheese what's going to happen this coming season, good or bad, by the way. Um, but let's look at Shula as a play caller historically. Now at Alabama, so I went back and looked, started watching some things. He was pretty conservative there. They wanted to be a ground based offense. They had running backs like Darby. Kenneth Darby was really good at the time. And when they got it going, they did well. I still remember in '05, which was their best team. I was at the Auburn Carolina game, and it's weird because at Auburn, everybody's tailgating. It's a night game. Carolina was terrible that night too, by the way. I had a good time. It's the best 48-7 loss I've ever ever been to. But so we're sitting there tailgating under a tree at Auburn, and Florida's playing Alabama, and that's Urban's first year, and Alabama beat the tar out of them, 31-3. And you could hear Eli Gold's voice echoing through the tailgate lot, and Auburn people were so distraught they weren't saying anything. It was like silent. So weird. But that was Mike Shula's best team in '05. They had Tyrone Prothro when they came to Columbia before that game in '05, which was 20 years ago, which I can't believe. And beat Carolina's butt pretty good on national TV. And play calling wise, that was a good day for Shula because South Carolina's defense, John Thompson and Tyrone Nix took over the defense mid-year that year, but they had sort of an exotic 3-3-5 stand-up thing, and Shula just kept checking into the dive play when they would stand up, and Bama gashed them, and they had a good day passing the ball. 37-14 was the final in that one. So, he had a good year that year. I think primarily, though, that was the idea. But in the SEC in 2007, you had a lot of ground-based teams. They ran the dang ball. It wasn't like pre-Spurrier where you had nobody, nobody else was passing it but Florida, but it was still, but it kind of stayed that way until Saban hired Lane Kiffin and they started doing more spread. Then everybody started spreading it out and throwing it, and the offenses kind of evolved. It was nothing like the Big 12 at the time, by the way. That said, he did have some criticism being too conservative. You look at it, and obviously they did not have great seasons. They had a lot of injury issues at quarterback, though. I remember them having to go play Georgia. Georgia was rolling under Rick, and Spencer Pennington out there, and it was just a mismatch in some of those years. We remember the 20-3 game where Carolina went in there and ran it up the Bahunkuses, and the offense did nothing. Carolina won in Tuscaloosa, the only time they've won down there during the SEC era, 20-3. And that was Lou Holtz's last team. John Strickland was on that team. It was a big win. And so Savell Newton was the quarterback that day. But he had a lot of injuries at quarterback, so it gets to be hard to tell. You move on into the pros, and honestly, his best year was that Cam Newton year, statistically and just about everything else. But play calling wise, I always say NFL, same sport, different game. Dowell Loggins certainly had his struggles in the NFL as well. But Shula's had good years, and with the Panthers and Newton, they did a lot of like RPO type of stuff, wide runs with Williams and with Stewart, and Cam, of course, ran and things like that. and that was 10 years ago, but that's what worked for them. And then I guess went to the Giants for a while, was the coordinator up there. It's basically your pro offense, what everybody else is doing. So, what's he going to do at South Carolina? And this is where it gets interesting because for a long time, I kind of thought, maybe rightfully so, that sometimes NFL guys will come back to college and you better have, if you're going to do exactly what you did in the NFL, you better have like Charlie Weiss had Brady Quinn and Jimmy Clausen at Notre Dame. Always had a pretty good offense. He goes to Florida, he has John Brantley, disaster. He goes to Kansas and has nobody, complete disaster. That doesn't mean Charlie Weiss can't call plays. That means his offense is too complex. And we saw that at Carolina a while back. Dowell Loggins had a lot of different plays, but it was very simple to learn. I believe, without knowing for sure, that Shula is going to continue that as far as easy to learn offense, right? Hopefully, I think that's the key. But he hadn't ran an offense in college in 18 years. Go back to Alabama. So, that's the hope. I haven't heard anything different. No complaints by anybody or anything like that. So what's it going to be like? I do think that South Carolina will continue to try to establish the run. One of the things Shula did put in that he likes that we saw in the bowl game was the lead blocker, Maurice Brown, as kind of a fullback type for the tailback. And, that was a thing. And I believe it led to a 36, 39-yard touchdown run by Oscar Attaway with a hole big enough to drive a truck through. I think that was, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But so that's good. I think obviously at times last year, you probably look at the run game and go, man, if Rocket just had a lead blocker, that would have been good. I believe that gone is some of the triple option, zone read option type stuff that Loggins installed that's left over from the Houston Nutt era at Arkansas. And I believe that simplifies things for the offensive line, which is, I think, is a key to them, being good this year. I think, I don't know why sometimes, maybe it's just the game and maybe I'm dumb, but, even high school teams get too complex up front on offense. And you're trying to block and stop people that are just pinning their ears back and coming that are more athletic than you. I don't know that you're going to trick them. In the NFL, those are pros. You can do that. In college, yeah, the less is more when it comes to the offensive line, because they got to concentrate on stopping, keeping the pressure off the quarterback, opening holes, kicking people's ass, that kind of thing. So that was a good sign. Now, all spring they worked on pass game. I think Mike Shula, being a former quarterback, and I think they got a pretty good idea of what to do in the pass game. I think the receivers are happy and learning it. Route running is going to be important, but they really emphasize pass game. So my question becomes, South Carolina was fourth in the SEC in rushing last year. They basically, statistically, were a run-based offense. But they did throw the ball. I mean, you had some games where they did. The numbers weren't always great throwing the ball. A lot of that was because of pressure, and LaNorris would just get it on his own in certain situations. A bunch of sacks last year. That was not good. But so the question becomes, can Carolina statistically continue to be a good running team in the SEC? I think Rasul Faison would be very helpful with that. I think the run blocking got frustrating for me at times last year, just because there were times I couldn't get a push, and I'm like, you have Rocket Sanders, and all that good stuff. So the blocking will have to improve, but hey, you start running lead blockers, you do less, trick you kind of runs and more, power. I think these guys on the O line are all big, strong, physical guys. They're tough. I mean, they're not cream puffs. I just think the mental side of it sometimes, got them. Torricelli Simpkins in the Clemson game had a bad game, but it's not like he's not capable or tough or physical or athletic enough to do it. So that's going to be a key this coming year. So simplification up front on offense, I think goes a long way. I think with regards to the pass game, and this gets back to quarterback coaching, what he does with Sellers and as far as reads and being patient, and also, um, what G.A. Mangus and McElroy said, getting his lower body fundamentally right to where you set and fire and your fundamentals don't escape you, and that will cut down on some of the inaccurate passes. He's not an inaccurate passer. He just like any quarterback, when you don't get your feet set, you're sometimes going to throw it errantly, right? Improved talent at receiver, whether that's returning guys or freshmen, is going to help get guys open, scramble play, all that good stuff. So, what I expect South Carolina to be this year is I don't know that they will finish top four in rushing in the SEC. What I do think is they'll have an improved passing game and they'll have more balance. Now, sometimes you can't force balance. If your receivers can't get open and your quarterback's getting pressure, he needs to take off and run, because that's going to mean the difference between a sack or a short yardage play and maybe a 50-yard touchdown when you have Sellers back there. But I think that's the idea. And when you hear, because I know Shula publicly has been like, well, patience and all that, preaching that part of it. And so it worries you when you watch the bowl game where it looked like Sellers was hesitant to run. I get it. It's human nature. These days, believe what you see, what you think you see and hear. and I don't fault anybody for thinking about that. It's just not the case. But I don't fault anybody for thinking that, man, because gosh, look at this big online media world we live in now, and information is interesting, to say the least. So, but I think what they want to do is balance, because what you do when you have balance is you don't have a situation where teams have to worry about stopping more than one thing. Think about this. So let's say Shula hits it out of the park, play calling wise, and he's in the zone and all that good stuff. And look, before I finish this point, I'll say this. I used to think NFL guys, that's not a good fit, because I've seen too many disasters. And I've been clear about that through the years. Pro style offense, whatever. But pro style offense can mean a lot of things nowadays. I mean, I don't think for a minute that if Andy Reid could teach it and simplify it where college kids could learn it, that the Chiefs, that he wouldn't go up and down the field in college. And then there's some examples of guys that, maybe were up and down in the pros that have come back to college and done well. Pat Shurmur, I thought Deion Sanders was crazy. I thought he was nuts. Sean Lewis, who's now the head coach at San Diego State, lit it up at Kent State. Man, they played Georgia one day. Georgia was really good. Beautiful game plan. Kent State's a dumpster fire now, by the way. And Deion didn't like him, and I was like, well, I mean, this is about Shurburtt and all this good stuff. So Pat Shurmur, who'd been in the NFL, who Deion knew, he took over the offense, and they actually got better. So it shows how much I know. And Shurburtt had the season he did, and they had a good, went up and down the field. There was really no skipping of the beat. And oh, by the way, Mike Shula's coached with Pat Shurmur quite a bit. So that gives you an example of hope. I thought Dowell Loggins did a pretty good job. We'll see what he does at App State. I think there were times he would kind of get a little too conservative. Missouri game was an example of that. Second half against Oklahoma, I get it. You're trying to win the game. You don't want Oklahoma to come back, but it got frustrating even in a great win. But he sure dialed up some great ones, though, this year. I mean, I think so. You look at it that way, and Todd Monken, when he came back from the NFL and coached at Georgia, and then he went back. I think he's with the Ravens now. He was best play caller in college football. I've never seen anything like what he did at Georgia with the horizontal attack with a power game and the tight ends and Stetson Bennett. My goodness, we didn't see that out of Todd Monken before when he was in the NFL. So the hope is for something like that with Shula. And I think Mike Shula's very comfortable, happy to be back in college, fired up. He's not a dumb guy, you know. I don't think we're going to see the 2000 Alabama offense. Um, but you kind of look at it that way, and with the examples, and it kind of eases your mind a little bit. So, and I think too, balance is the key. If you have guys that are open, um, you find them, you play quarterback at a higher level, you can get there because teams are, what are we going to stop? Well, you got to stop everything. Oh gosh. And so then it's just, one-on-ones and making plays and having good athletes. So, kind of to wrap this up, I expect Carolina to still attempt to run the ball, but I do think there's going to be an emphasis on balance. Like I said, big emphasis on the passing game. Uh, and I think that as far as play calling goes, we will see. I can't guarantee you that we're going to look out there and see elite play calling. Although sometimes it's not play calling. Sometimes play calling, we walk away and go, "Gosh, they scored 2 points or 3 points and 2 points with a safety. Got shut out. And play calling sucked." Well, sometimes it's not that way. Sometimes you dial up the right plays and the execution isn't there and all that. The coach always takes responsibility, right? But it's a little more nuanced than that, as we all know. This game is. All right, looking forward to Inside the Gamecocks, the show later today. I enjoyed talking about this. Obviously, it's a wait and see because he hadn't called plays in 18 years at the college level. Obviously, I think they're going to continue to try to run the ball. Hope they're successful with that because that's going to open up what I think will be an improved passing game this year. So, as far as creativity and things like that go, I do expect some. I do. I would tell you that as well. All right. Enjoyed talking about this. Don't forget complete coverage of recruiting on thebigspur.com. We'll talk about it on the show. Ben Portnoy and Rob Williams on the morning show. This is JC Shurburtt. It's been coffee. Have a great day, everyone. Holla at you soon.